and welcome to Carbon Crunching Clerics, our October edition. Hopefully we'll have this out well in time for you to get some of these wonderful resources in and ready in your churches for this month. A huge welcome to Reverend Marcus Siblin.
Hello.
And to Father Neil Hook. Hooray!
Hello there.
It seems like such a long time since we last met. I'm sure it's not, but it feels that way.
It does.
I have chosen a canticle from The Earth Cries Glory, Daily Prayer with Creation, for us to begin with today. So, it's called A Song of the Wild Spirit, and it's inspired by Job 38. Come with me, says the Spirit of creation. Come to the deep places of the earth. Come to the moment when the sea is born and the waters teem with life. Join with me in the song of the stars, of the morning stars shouting for joy. For I am she who gives the morning. I am the living spirit of the dawn. I shake the foundations of the arrogant and those who set themselves up as gods. Those who decide who is worthy and who is not. Those who deny my gifts are for all. I am found in the fields of light and the places of deepest shadow. I fall in the rain and flow with the river. I am the father and mother of it all. I am the wisdom that lives in Orion and binds itself to the human heart. I am wild and undefined. No story tells my beginning and end. I am wild and undefined, and you are the child of my heart. Amen.
Amen.
So, October. There's an awful lot going on in October. We have Unblocktober we're going to talk about today. We have World Food Day happening. We also have Bible Sunday. COP26 is coming up shortly after October. And of course, we cannot forget, it's also the month where we remember Francis of Assisi. And if we forget him, Father Neil will be upset. So maybe we should start with Francis of Assisi. Father Neil, over to you.
So we're recording this actually on the 21st, and that means that as a Franciscan I'm in the middle of Francis Tide, which goes from the 17th of September to the 4th of October. 17th of September marking the Feast of the Stigmata of St. Francis, when he received the wounds on his hands and feet. And the 4th of October being the day of his, when we mark his death, and also when we think about the fact that it's the end of creation season in the church's year. And the thing about Francis is that he is often portrayed as this hippie character. I don't think that the 1970s film Brother Sun, Sister Moon did him any favours. There was lots of ethereal Claire floating through wildflowers and panpipes and flutes in the background and that sort of thing. But we have to remember that Francis was a member of the church, the Roman Catholic Church as it was then in the 13th century. He was actually a deacon within the church, and he tried to shift the church. He tried to change the church away from a contemplative lifestyle. Francis tried to change the church. He wanted to move religious brothers from being contemplatives and eremites, from being monks and being hermits. And instead, he wanted them to embrace a more active ministry, what's called a mendicative ministry. And that work from the inside out still needs to go on today. I know that Francis is the flag bearer for ecology, but he succeeded in shifting the church and allowing for the establishment of these mendicant orders that would go out and do things and work with the poor and work with the needy. And that's what we need to do. We need to get the church excited. We need to get the church innovated. We need to get the 6 billion Christians, or the 6 billion people who believe in God the Creator. Let's put it that way. Because not all of them are Christians, but the 1.1 billion people on the planet who believe in God the Creator, to actually shift and speak with one voice. One of the things that I've discovered this Francis Tide is the Via Creationis. Somebody's done the Stations of Creation, and it's a Franciscan brother from India who's done them, and Father Gilbert. They're absolutely amazing, working your way through from God creating, and then God entrusting the earth, the covenant, the story of Noah. God introduces the concept of the Jubilee. The heavens proclaim the glory of God. There's the 8th station, when the Creator becomes the creature, when God is made incarnate in the person of Jesus. So this is something that I really want to explore as well.
Yeah, Francis is such an amazing character, isn't he? And very hard to kind of peer into who he is, through all of the later accretions, isn't it? And try to clear that from your mind, as you say, sort of 70s movies and so on. And also, there's lots of sort of awful images, aren't there, of him, sort of sentimental images and so on. But
he's always got birds in his hand.
Birds in his hand, that's it.
Yes, he's become a very popular garden ornament, as St. Francis. He's only got a bird in one hand and then sort of like a tray in the other, which functions as a bird bath or a bird table.
So does it? I want to get one of those ornaments. Yeah.
I don't know if I've mentioned it before, but Joseph Boyce, who is an artist that worked as far as I'm aware, he's still producing right now. But he did an installation. Well, it was a live art piece where he sat in a room with a cloak around him and a staff, with a coyote in the room with him, and that to me was the closest thing to Francis, because it was not about him, being this miraculous person with birds flying around all over him like a Snow White character. It was very much about the nitty gritty of being in that kind of relationship with creation, where creation has the capacity to be all, it has the capacity to be very dangerous, but yet it is so fantastic. A thing that, it just, the piece itself really spoke to me about our relationship with creation. So Joseph Boyce, brilliant. I can't say enough how, and I think I may have mentioned it in last year when we spoke about Francis, so I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, but it's very...
That's something that's Sophie, isn't it? Because it's that sense of awe and wonder and humility before nature, as much as this sense of control and, the pretty birds and so on.
Yeah.
And it does give you the opportunity to have a pet service in church.
Yeah.
First Sunday in October. So if you've had your harvest festival, as we did last weekend with our jam jar flower festival and all that sort of stuff, we made sure that we tried to have as carbon neutral a harvest festival as we could. No bought flowers, reusable jam jars. Vegetables from people's gardens, and that sort of thing. But if you want to mark the end of creation season at the beginning of October, then why not just encourage people to bring their pets to church and do it that way? So, and I know you're right, Marcus. It is a bit twee at times, but actually, that sometimes that helps when you're doing things with children. The fact that he is twee and there are lots of stories and colouring pictures and stuff out there means that there's a lot of resources.
There are, aren't there? Yeah, it's very true.
You can very easily access. So
maybe I'm too addicted to sort of misery-lit tales. Like to get to the underbelly of what's going on. But Francis, he really went on a journey, didn't he? I think because it's one of his first senses of God calling him was this voice saying, "Rebuild my church," wasn't it? And then he took that almost literally to rebuild that chapel or small church, you know, in his surroundings, and some brothers
in San Damiano, that tiny little church which is now surrounded by a massive church.
It's encased in another church.
Yes, encased in another church. Yeah. And as he put the last stone in, he fell to his knees and said, "You know, Lord, I've done what you asked. I've rebuilt the church." And the voice came again, "Francis, rebuild my church."
Okay, I didn't realize that second. Yeah, and that's the amazing thing, is that he realised, oh gosh, perhaps that's not quite what was required. I mean, it was perhaps a step in his journey. And he's so radical, isn't he, from the time, really, and then to think, okay, let's go out there, take it on the road, you know. And I guess we're on that similar sort of journey. Well, every age is, isn't it? How do we rebuild the church? What's required of us now? And it's just different to what was required centuries ago. And part of that now is engaging with this, you know, care for creation, isn't it? And the world outside that's equally worried about it. That is definitely part of rebuilding the church. Sure.
One of the new Grove booklets, I haven't had the opportunity to buy it yet, but it's in the Mission and Evangelism section, and it's called Climate Change's Mission: How to Link the Gospel with the Safeguarding of Creation. And it's basically doing what Francis wants us to do, you know, rebuild that church. Rebuild the church into something that has the safeguarding of creation at its core, to engage in prophetic activism against these unjust structures.
On that note, Hazelnut Community Farm, which is now sort of spreading its wings a little, and we have networks dotted about the country. But they are launching something called the Potting Shed in January. The Potting Shed is going to be a course for people who are looking to align church, basically, with creation care. And so if they're looking to plant community church farms, or so similar to the Dairies Acre project, where they're bringing church and community and ecology and sustainability and environmental issues together, those things are being brought together. And this course is to help people from the early sort of stages of thinking that through, how might that happen, to completion. So it's I don't think it's particularly, I think it's every other week, so I don't think it's, and it's going to be on Zoom so that people from around the country can join in. They have some really good names. I know that Norman Worsbert and Ruth Valerio have been involved with writing the course, so that might be you know, something for people to be involved in. And helpful for anybody who's looking to think outside the box, think outside the church box, for the future.
That sounds great. So we just signpost people. I'll try and get a link to that, can't we, on the website?
Yeah, definitely. And I can put it on the end of this video, hopefully, as well, if I remember to do that bit. We'd best move on. So we need to talk about various other things. Should we start with Bible Sunday? Should we work from the end of the month and work our way forward? So Bible Sunday is on the 24th of October today, this year, 24th of October. And as I understand it, there are plenty of resources available on the biblesociety.org.uk website, including sermons, which have been pre-recorded, but also has notes with it as well if you wanted to do your own sermon. It has a video about Bible mission by Di Woolridge, prayers, stories and testimonies, children and youth activities, and posters and social media resources. So there are lots and lots of things on the biblesociety.org.uk website. Yes, so where are we with Bible Sunday, Marcus?
I think Bible Sunday is a great time to reflect upon the Bible and its place in our faith and discipleship and church life. Something we don't often perhaps do, really. I think we're quite good at mining the Bible for quotes, for inspiration and so on. But actually, to think, how do we use it? How should we use it? we don't always do that. And I think it's instructive, first of all, to step back and think of the church's year. And Bible Sunday comes, very much towards the end, doesn't it? But it's not the culmination. We've still got Christ the King to come later. It's just worth bearing that in mind, that the Bible is instrumental to our faith. And I came to faith through reading the Bible. I don't want to underestimate it, but at the same time, the living Word of God, is Jesus Christ, isn't it? And it's that we interpret the Bible in the light of that, really. And so Bible Sunday, I think, because we've got creation care on our minds here, C3PO, you can get a purchase on that, I think, by looking at the way the Bible is used to unpack, our call for creation care, or sometimes to resist it, actually. And it just gives you a sense of how we use the Bible, because sometimes the Bible can be used to recover, injunctions to care for creation, and you can look back at Genesis and say, well, we can interpret it. Dominion means stewardship, or you can or to till and keep the earth means to care for it. So I think it does. So you can kind of try and recover an environmental ethic from the Bible. Sometimes, though, the Bible is used to resist creation care, quite strongly in certain circles. So it's interesting to know that you can do both, And so there are premillennialists, or these dispensationalists and so on, who sort of think that the Earth's all going to be wrapped up fairly shortly. So we really don't need to worry about looking after it. I'm looking forward to being plucked out of it and given a new heaven and a new earth, as it says in 2 Peter. So there's circles that say actually environmentalism has nothing to do with us because it's all going to be wrapped up shortly, and you can sort of justify that biblically on a narrow reading. But a more useful approach, I think, is to think of like a revisionist approach, really, to the Bible, and so you can certainly mine it for all sorts of useful guidance, and it's there, And I think that one of the joys of the environmental urgency, the environmental crisis we're in, is that we can look at the Bible and find this ancient document speaks still to our time, but not simplistically. If you try and pluck out a creation care agenda unthinkingly from it, you're probably going to do a disservice to the Bible and what's being said at the time. So, for example, if you look at the prophets, there's lots and lots of recognition there that our sinfulness is linked to the earth languishing, and actually our return to right living with God will bring blessing and fruitfulness and reconciliation in all sorts of ways. So that's fantastic, but also we can't sort of think that the prophets were environmentalists in the way that we are, because when if you actually look at what they think constitutes right living, it's probably the right sacrifices in the temple, isn't it, and all sorts of things like that. It's not quite where we're at. So it's not to say that it doesn't apply today, but somehow where we are today and who we are affects how we read the Bible, and we shouldn't be shy of recognising that, because the Bible can stand up for it and speak to our time and bring a new need and a new circumstance to it. So it gives a very interesting way in, I think, to talking about the Bible, how we use it, and a chance to sort of unpack some creation care theology at the same time. So Bible Sunday, could be a chance to explore some of those themes.
Marcus, do you think that the fact that when we talk about the environment these days, there is an overtly scientific presentation of what is going on to our planet, and therefore that debate about creation care seems to have been sucked into a little bit into the science-faith argument and dichotomy, when actually there is a whole theological approach to creation care, and to the way that we interact with all that God made, which is set aside. I think there's a lot of skepticism out there because the green agenda, as they call it, is seen as part of sort of like science, and science and faith are seen as antagonistic to each other.
Oh no, I'm sure you're right, Neil. That there is that sense, isn't there, that's sometimes unacknowledged, but there behind people's view of science and so on, and the church, and that they're somehow at war or have been, and uneasy sort of partners, which is really, really sad. I mean, because when you look at the history of development of thinking and the sciences and so on, it's intimately bound up with, you know, with people of faith and behind all sorts of developments and so on. And there was examples of the church resisting scientific development, but you can normally trace that to sort of politics and power rather than theology and, you know, and godliness. But no, I'm sure you're right. And the sense that somehow the green agenda, if we call it that, is a sort of secular imposition, you know, upon Christians, rather than, we need to reclaim that territory, don't we, and recognise, you know, the creation care, you know, as our calling. You know, we don't have to call it the green agenda. That's not, you know, it's okay as far as it goes, but there's more to it than that, isn't there? And creation care is, and the Christian calling is so much deeper, I think, than just sort of responding to cleaning up a mess that's around. And I mean, I think perhaps we could talk about, we might mention, because the Diocesan Conference is in October as well, that this is something we're going to talk about a little bit there, you know, moving a bit beyond what the secular world is sometimes calling for, in just a mathematical sense of reducing our carbon emissions and so on. And we wanted to be sort of positively healing the earth, aren't we? We want to try and ask the diocese if they'll respond to that, you know, and to reframe the debate away from just carbon emissions and thinking, let's heal and repair our planet and care for it, you know, as Christ does. So yeah, it's a territory we need to reclaim and bridge that divide. I think you're right, Neil.
Yeah, moving from carbon zero to creation positive.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I spoke briefly on Sunday evening as part of my sermon about some of those topics, about this, but it's about that awe and wonder that we've lost. We no longer believe in miracles. As a society generally, we no longer believe in miracles, and yet actually just because we call it science doesn't make it any less miraculous. So when we're talking, I was thinking about St. David. He was, you know, known for his miracles. One in particular was that he found water springing up from a well. Well, you know, we in our 21st century context, we recognise that water springs up from a well because there's an overabundance of water because we've had rain or a storm or so on and so forth. But does that make it any less miraculous? Is it any less of a miracle because we understand how it happens?
Yeah.
It's about stop trying to overcomplicate things and actually just stand back and go, wow. Wow. This is amazing. This planet is beautiful. And I think a lot of people during the pandemic really realized actually that we spend so much time trying to be scientific, trying to be, to overly think things, that they understood that there is a wonder about this planet that somewhere along the lines we've lost. We sleepwalk through life, not recognizing the awe and wonder that our planet is capable of giving us.
Oh, it's so easy to do though, isn't it, Sophie? I mean, I was walking the dog this morning and charging around the same old route, thinking I must get to my computer to answer my emails, and I forced myself to stop for a little bit and try and practice what I preach. You know, it's about I have trouble doing sometimes, and because the morning light was streaming through the trees, and it's that misty sort of morning, and I just thought, just stop for a second, you know, and just give. I was trying to say my prayers on the way round, and just give thanks to God for this beautiful light coming through the trees, and it's just so easy to forget that, and and take delight in it. So yeah, we do need to do that. I think you're right.
I'm going to have to move us on again. Sorry, guys. World Food Day. World Food Day is on the 16th of October. As I understand it, World Food Day is about trying to convince the world that we need to have more sustainable agri-food systems. Presumably by that they mean that we look at the way that we eat in order to change the supply. So if we change ourselves individually, then the systems that produce the food in the way that they do at the moment will need to change. And therefore, so if we buy more sustainable from more sustainable sources, such as, you know, a local butcher rather than Tesco's, we would then eat less food, less meat, because of the cost of it. But then that would drive the prices up, which would mean that farmers would have to produce less, which would then even out the amount. And as I understand it, so it's changing us in order to change the systems worldwide, as I understand what World Food Day is about.
It's run by the FAO, which is the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN, and they've been around since the end of World War II, 1945, and their focus is on freeing humanity from hunger and malnutrition by trying to intervene in the global food system. And that has shifted more recently to embrace topics around sustainability in agriculture, but also food security as well. You know, we make a lot of the fact that our shelves are relatively empty at the moment because of a lack of HGV drivers, and we haven't got enough carbon dioxide gas to store our artichokes so that we can, you know, have our fancy dinner parties, when actually there are people who are literally living day to day, and we need to think about how we have a responsibility to them as well. Yes, in our recent harvest festivals, maybe we thought about our local food bank, and we collected and we put our tins of sardines and peaches from the back of the cupboard in there. But buying sustainably, buying from free trade, and putting our supermarkets, which are some of the biggest businesses of the world, under pressure to try to work with local communities so that they support those who are on subsistence agriculture. Otherwise, what happens is they have no choice but to cut more of the forest down so that they can feed themselves.
That does. People are faced with complicated choices sometimes, aren't they? In the supermarket, and you can't sometimes feel you can't do wrong, you know, right for doing wrong. So you think, okay, I'll try and reduce my dairy because I know that is a bit damaging, you know, and so I'll buy some soy milk instead. But then, you know, you can be deforesting the rainforest if it's the wrong sort of stuff, can't you? So it is difficult, but there are some sort of guiding principles, I think, aren't there, to help us. And I mean, generally, a lower meat diet is good for the planet, and it doesn't mean, of course, you have to abandon our local farmers. Quite the reverse, really. Sort of Neil was saying, and you mentioned, Sophie, you know, so you can cut down your meat intake, maybe have a meat-free day a week, you know, or even a month. Just start somewhere, and it just means, and then, but when you do eat some meat, go out to the local butcher and do something, you know, that's going to support our local farmers. So you know the money's going right to the right people. And the reason about eating less meat is because it just takes so much more land to grow the grain that feeds the animals, and we eat the animal, than if we just eat, you know, vegetable matter direct. You know, so we're just taking so much of the Earth's surface to feed ourselves because we eat a high meat diet. So that, I mean, there's other arguments too on animal welfare and so on, but on that sort of front, you know, it's that's the trouble, is we just need more planets than we've got to feed us on the sort of Western diets that we're become accustomed to.
Well,
so meat eating.
This is the thing. 26.4% of the planet are hungry. Of the humans on the planet are hungry, and this goes. World Food Day goes to the heart of that inequality, and the fact that we waste so much food in the West.
Yeah. I always find it surprising, but it's very high percentage, isn't it, Neil, of the stuff that gets tossed away. I forget the statistic, but it's like almost a third or something doesn't seem to get into people's mouths. I don't quite know what goes on in people's houses. Certainly doesn't happen around here. But yeah, people do. I think it's people throwing stuff away if it's slightly out of date, getting a bit hung up on sell-by dates and stuff. And I'm not sure, but yeah, I think you're right. Making sure you do eat everything you buy, helpful.
But also, of course, we import a tremendous amount of food. We don't eat seasonally in this country. Here we go. See, I'll fess up now. Got my banana. I've got my banana, my fair trade banana from the Honduras. It may be fair trade, and it may help that community over there. But really, should I be eating a banana at this time of year when I can eat a Cox's pickle?
Yeah, I know. Well, apple seeds, doesn't it? You're right there, Neil. Definitely. Yeah. And what's surprising that you go into supermarkets now, and it's just perfect apple time, and how few apples come from the UK or Europe, and they're still flown in. You think, my word, you've got these delights you can get locally. So try and buy those to encourage the supermarkets to keep going, to support our local growers.
There is this, for those of you who like walking and you're still doing that pilgrimage to COP26, then one of the things that World Food Day organisations are trying to encourage is for you to walk 3.7 miles in one day. Because 3.7 miles is what the UN tell us is the average walk for a woman to get water in communities that are struggling with subsistence agriculture. So she will walk sort of like just under 2 miles to get water, and then to bring it back for her family.
Wow. That's a long way.
It really is, isn't it? Carrying something.
Carrying something.
And it's heavy water. It's really heavy.
Yeah. Right. I'm going to move this on again. Sorry, guys.
Okay.
Unblocktober. So
yeah, I think it links quite well what Neil was saying about water, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, Unblocktober is it's suggested that for a whole month, in order to try and reduce the amount of fatbergs, which is a bit like an iceberg, only made up from fat. Fatbergs, we need to try and reduce the amount of stuff that we are putting down our drains, including cooking oil, food crumbs, cooking sauces, wet wipes, period products, nappies, condoms, Q-tips or cotton buds, and face masks. That's just some of the problem products that popped up on their list of 18 things that we are asked to try and avoid putting down our drains during October. So, how do we include that in our church life this month?
Yeah, have a sort of gather around the toilet bowl session. I was at the shop. Carry on.
It's not sexy, is it? Who wants to actually talk in church about these sorts of things? But as Unblocktober tells us, half of us in the UK pour fat and oil and grease directly down the sink. Half. And that goes down, and it doesn't just create problems in sewers, but it creates problems further down in the processing of waste. And it's not just about those fatbergs, it's about the fact that there are 8 million tons of plastic are dumped in the ocean every year. And as part of that, a certain amount of that is the hidden plastics that we think, oh, there's no plastic in that, or just the one little bit won't make a difference. The famous image of the seahorse with its tail curled around the cotton bud really captured people's imagination. If you've got a toilet in your church, then why not put an Unblocktober poster up on the door of the toilet where everybody can see it, that just draws attention to these things. Not only will it then say, please don't put this stuff down our toilet so that we don't have a problem, it will also raise awareness of what people are doing.
Well, that's good. Can you get an Unblocktober poster? I'll have to have a look. Print one out. That sounds good. This whole subject's quite close to my heart because I used to work on the sharp end of blockages in sewers, really, when I was at the Centre for Alternative Technology, responsible for their sewage system. So I'd have to sort of sift through stuff at times. And but also, we made a lot of compost from composted sewage solids, and all the plastic would turn up in that. But actually, at that stage, you could pluck it out, which is quite helpful, and it wouldn't go into the sea. So that was quite a good method. But no, I think because people just treat the toilet as a very convenient dustbin, isn't it? You can just, or the sink, throw things down it without giving too much thought to what happens downstream. And but also, sewage treatment does take a tremendous amount of energy. And there's a lot of electricity gets pumped into the sewage treatment works, so little villages and towns and so on. And you can reduce that impact by taking some of that stuff out of the waste stream. So if you can compost your kitchen oil, on a bit of paper in the compost bin in the garden, great. And you've taken all that energy requirement away from the sewage works. And one thing to avoid putting down the sink as well is milk, an old milk, because it really takes a lot of energy to break that down. You think it's innocuous, but it's really strong, actually, really, really strong stuff. So if you can make some scones with that, or give it to the dog to eat, and or is that not sensible advice? I don't know. But if you can do something with it or compost it, all to the good. You're saving a lot of carbon emissions there as well.
It seems like such a simple thing to do, doesn't it? To stop, and yet I know that I think it was last night, the night before, we'd had tomatoey pasta, and which has got lots of oil in it. I'm sure it will have had, because it would have had, the tomato sauce would have had oil in it, and you just rinse the plates off before you put your plates in the dishwasher or whatever, and so it's actually not as simple. You have to really think about and change your mindset. But it's such an important thing to do. Yeah,
it's interesting because we are one of the countries in the world that doesn't have grey water systems. So most countries in the world, the water that comes out of your tap will be potable, but the water that flushes the toilet and goes into your heating system won't be potable, won't be drinkable. It will have already gone through that filter system once. But in this country, because we have a lot of rain, we kind of take that water for granted. And we assume that we'll turn on the tap and fresh water will come out and just take all of our problems away. And then you think about that woman that's walked 3.7 miles in a day to carry water to her family. And if we did that, then very quickly we would start to think about how we sustainably dispose of things.
Is there anything else that that I have forgotten that we should have spoken about today?
I guess St. Luke's Day comes within October.
Okay.
Luke the physician. So we think about him as a healer of people, but also for people to be healthy requires they have a healthy environment as well. And I think for so much of our health issues today in the West are mental health ones, aren't they? And appreciating the environment, delighting in creation is so key to sort of restoring a good stable balance in your mind. So this might be a theme you could sort of pick out on St. Luke's Day as well.
Thank you, Marcus. Anything else from you, Neil?
Wow. I suppose you've got St. Jude on the 28th of October, patron saint of lost causes. So I don't necessarily want to pray for the environment, under the care of St. Jude, but there are times when I feel that I'm talking to a brick wall. To be frank, who's Frank? I am, apparently. It's that the three of us, we go on about this all the time. We go on about this issue. And, you know, my sermons in this creation tide have obviously majored about this. And somebody said to me after my sermon on Sunday, that's the third sermon that sort of like this month that you've sort of like given us the same sort of message.
Yeah.
You know, maybe it's time to change it up. And I was sort of like, well, people don't seem to be paying attention to what I'm saying.
No.
And so I'm just going to have to keep saying it until they do.
I think you're right. It reminds me of a story I was told by a Franciscan brother, Neil, about St. John at the end of his life down in Patmos. And he kept preaching sermons, exhorting the brothers and to love each other. And one of the brothers came to him and said, "You keep telling us just to love each other. You know, why do you keep saying that?" And then St. John goes, "Well, do you love each other?" You know, left it there. And it's the same sort of thing, isn't it? You know, yes, we're going on and on about it, but it just until the change happens, you know, what can you do?
Yeah. Guys, we are going to have to leave it there. We have been going for a long time now.
Oh, yeah, have we?
And so, Father Neil, can I please ask you to pray for us before we're finished?
Yes.
Thank you.
Let's pray. Lord, we hold before you your earth, your planet, everything that lives and dwells upon it. We give you thanks for the opportunities that we have to make an intervention, to change the way that we live, to help others to come to realise the seriousness of the situation. Help us this month to break open their hearts as we break open the scriptures on Bible Sunday, and remind each and every one of us that we are beloved and cherished, all of us, the plants and the animals as well. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
It's been a pleasure. We'll see you again next month. Bye.
Bye.